information that we share with you tonight is going to be new. But what our goal for tonight will be is to tie in our faith, tie in understanding child behavior, and then family dynamics, and how those are all intertwined. We're going to take some time where we're going to share some information again, probably not new information, but then we're going to give some time to just talk as table groups and kind of share ideas and bounce ideas off each other, and then share back out. So that's kind of what it's going to look like, the plan for tonight.
We know that everything starts in the home, and that parents are really the primary educators of faith. Sorry, I need to talk into the microphone. I don't have the loud, boomy voice that Anna has. We really want to talk tonight how the home is really the place where we can model that love and that forgiveness and reconciliation. And we want to talk about some ways that we do that in the school, but also where it's going to start in the home, and we know it is starting in the home. And like Anna said, this isn't rocket science. We're not telling you a lot of new things. We're just having the discussion and giving you opportunities to talk about how you can do that in the homes and how you are doing that in your homes. We want to respond to children in ways that are going to shape both their moral and spiritual growth. And there are ways that we can model that in the home. We don't always do it. None of us are perfect, and none of us expect to be perfect, but when we take that time to just stop and think about what we're doing and what we're modeling for our children, this is a place where we can talk about that and give some experiences to do that.
So we want to give some big idea pictures around understanding child behavior. Children test boundaries as a part of development. It's how they figure out right from wrong. It's how they develop their morals and values. That's what kids do, right? But what we want to really hone in on is that behavior is a form of communication. And when there is a need that's unmet, or they are seeking attention, or they are frustrated, they act out. They don't always have the means to articulate what it is that they're feeling and what they want to express to you, so it comes out as different behavior. And we do that as adults also when we are hangry, or when we are tired and don't have enough sleep. We respond to situations differently. However, because of our experience that we have had, we also are able to pause. We're also able to step away for a second. We're also able to articulate our feelings or our emotions in a different way than what children are, obviously. Obviously, emotional regulation, it develops over time. Children aren't born with it, and we're still working on it, and it will be an ever-long process throughout our entire life of how we adapt to situations. And just as we are learning and taking our time to develop those, so are children. So we have to recognize that we can't expect them to do something that we haven't explicitly taught, and we also have to give them the time and space to learn those things. So it's important to model our own emotional regulation for our children, just like we model our faith. It's important to model that regulation. And some of the ways that adults are able to do that, like I said, is to remove yourself from the situation and take a break and pause, or take a deep breath, or find some space, go for a run, work out, read, whatever it is that you need to do to process. We need to show those to our children. We can't expect them to know that's what they need to do in that moment, but the ways that you address situations or frustrations or situations, we can model for our kids, and we can explicitly show them.
Before I move on to this next slide, that's what Anna does all day long with our students, and she's fabulous at it, and I've watched her process with the kids. And one of the big things we need to think about with our children is the why behind the behavior. Where is it coming from? And so Anna talked a lot about those reasons of why they might be in certain places or acting in certain ways. And I really encourage you to approach each of those behavior situations in more of a sense of curiosity rather than in frustration. And I know that's easy to say, right? But that's what we're trying to model for our students. So finding ways that you can stop and take a breath or remove yourself from the strong emotions you're feeling about how your child is acting, but have that curiosity of, where is this coming from? You know, do I know my child? Do I know why they're acting the way that they are? So, oh, sorry, thank you for putting back. One of the things that we have at St. John's is every month we have a specific virtue that we are talking about. We as teachers are modeling it. We're encouraging our students to display that virtue. We're talking about how they can display that virtue. And in looking at our faith-based response to behavior, those virtues are perfect ways to model it. And when Anna was talking about that emotional regulation, when we did our last professional development with our teachers, talking about that social emotional regulation and teaching them those skills and competencies. And then after we did a lot on this and had a lot of discussions, we asked the teachers to look at those competencies and align it to, excuse me, and align it to what are those values that we're looking at and that we're focusing on each month. And it was pretty much a blackout. Anna put it all together and we're like, well, this isn't even a chart. They are all intertwined. So when we're teaching our children those skills about how they can really stop, think about their own behavior, what they can do, but also their relationship with each other and how they're reacting to each other. We teach them those skills. I don't know if you've walked through the halls, but you'll see the peace tables all throughout our school, and that was something a few years ago when we were really focusing on teaching them those skills. We instilled how do we deal with that conflict and helping them model it, but also practice. So in the home, that's where it's starting, right? When they're seeing those skills at home, when they're watching you model that forgiveness and that daily interaction with one another, and aligning how they're reacting to things and learning those skills of how to regulate themselves, it really is all aligned, and our faith is the foundation of that. Sorry for the awkward
For
silence.
you non-educators that are like SEL, it's kind of a buzzword in education, it's social emotional learning. And there are 5 competencies that she was talking about. It's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So for those of you that are like a little lost in that, it's all around education, especially right now. Just kind of wanted to give you that background. All right, so we've talked a little bit about how we do it in schools, but now we're talking about how do we put that into practice at home, okay? So the first one is moving from the punishment to teaching responsibility, having students or children take ownership over their actions, right? How do you do that? You encourage accountability. We really do this in a restorative lens at school, and some of the questions that you can ask are like, what happened? Who was affected? To what extent were they affected? What needs to happen to make things right? And then how do you repair that harm, that damage that was done? How are you going to do that? Asking some restorative type questions like that will get to the root of that why that we talked about a little bit before. And then obviously that third one, I already talked about this, like focusing on making amends, rebuilding that relationship. A restorative mindset and behavior will help repair that relationship between the child and whoever that they maybe wronged or hurt in that moment. So that's really how we can take the stuff that they're learning in schools and then also put it into practice in the home.
So how do we do that? How can we model that? Well, one, apologize sincerely when you need to. I know it's hard for kids to say, I'm sorry and truly feel it, but it's hard for us sometimes too, right? But model what that looks like. So this next one says, teach children to say sorry and make things right. Now, just making them apologize is not really teaching them to say sorry, because they really need to feel it. And in order to do that, they need to learn how to be empathetic and understand where their brother is coming from, or where their sister is coming from, or why they're feeling the way that they are. So it starts with themselves, it starts with ourselves, being able to really understand where we're at, how we can regulate what we're feeling, and how we can model that. And then transferring that, helping the children understand that, and then putting themselves in somebody else's shoes. And what would that look like? Like I talked about before, in the school, in our peace table, we have a specific model where they're speaking from themselves. I feel this way when this happens. And then having the student reflect, oh, I hear you feel this way when that happens. And then the next piece, which is really, really hard for kids, like, what do you want from them? Because often we don't really ask, like, what do you want in this? Like, maybe they don't really want an apology. Maybe they just don't want them to ever do it again, right? Or to try to not do it again. Never's a strong word. But helping them understand, what do I need to feel better and feel okay here? And then be able to listen to both sides, if there are two sides of the story, and then finding a way to reconcile in the end. And at our peace table, they say a prayer together. They can choose which prayer they want. Sometimes they make up their own prayer. So reflecting back and ending in that prayer. So teaching them that dialogue to take ownership of their emotions, but also recognize that there might be other emotions that the other child is feeling, and the sibling is feeling, and then being able to come together and reconcile together.
Setting boundaries with compassion is super important. Having clear expectations for students, clear consistency and predictability creates a safe place for students and children. So if they know that you're gonna fly off the handle the minute you say, I did this at school today, they're gonna start closing off, right? But if they understand that you're gonna ask some questions, you're gonna get curious about the why behind it, and and they know that that's what they're gonna be met with when a situation happens, that consistency, that predictability creates a safe place for them to then be able to open up and be able to share. Shift from timeouts to time-ins. I'm not saying there's not a time to remove, or children need to be removed from the situation. Timeouts or a space to calm down is super important, but it's also important to re-engage them. How can you bring them back in, and how can you be in it with them and process through something that was really challenging for them in that moment? And getting through that, they may need to take a break and be in your room for a hot minute, and we all need some space right now because that was a really big thing that just happened. But then that time in, as long as it's consistent and predictable and they know it, it provides that safety of, I know I'm gonna process this, I know that's what's gonna happen, and it creates a deeper relationship and open communication. Consistency helps children understand those natural consequences too, because you're then teaching that. They will understand that right from wrong. And as long as we're doing it with behavior, it really models our faith as well, because then we turn to God with our confessions and we confess our sins just like we confess or open up about our wrongdoing. So it models that faith aspect for us as well.
So how do we create that peaceful home? Active listening. We hear what they have to say. We ask them those questions, give them the opportunity to talk about what they're feeling, help them identify why they're reacting the way that they are, and calm responses, which is hard, I know, but we can all practice it. And if we're expecting children to be able to act calmly in those situations, we need to be able to model it ourselves. And that will build the trust. They'll understand, they'll have that trust that you're gonna stop and you're gonna listen to them. Now, with that said, you know, that he did this, she did that, they're coming, they're telling, that's where it all comes back around, that you help model that. Okay, what do you need? What would you like? Do you need me to help you talk this through? Or can you talk it through on your own? Or do you need a reminder of how to do that? So building that trust that, you know what, I'm not gonna go solve your problems for you. I'm not gonna go ground your brother because of what he did, but we're gonna talk through this. We're gonna come together and hear all of the sides and come up with a solution together, and that will build that trust. Reduce the yelling, I know, it's hard, and reduce, right? We can try, we can be mindful, because being mindful is the first start. Just thinking about, it happened, maybe you did yell, stop, reflect. How could I have done that different? Take your own time out, right? Calm yourself down. Maybe you don't want to deal with it right at that moment, and ask for, I need some space first before we talk through this, because you have strong feelings yourself. You're modeling to your children that it's okay to take that time before you're ready to talk it through. And then emphasizing kindness, gratitude, and prayer in your daily lives. Come together. This is a really, really simple, and maybe you find it silly, but it's something that I do with my family. I do a high-low buffalo. We do it at dinner every single night. That high, what is the gratitude? What was the best part about my day? And then what was the low? Because we're acknowledging not every day is perfect, and there are bad things that happen in our day. And then the buffalo is our random piece. What is something different, out of the ordinary, that happened today? I guarantee you that conversation every night, you'll learn a lot more about your kids' days than just saying, how was your day, right? Taking that time, and then you listen to one another. Everybody has that opportunity at your family table to talk about the good things that are happening, celebrate those. The bad things that are happening, or the difficult things, it'll give you that open avenue to talk about those challenges, and it also can be part of your prayer then. You know what the challenges are, so at the end of the day, those are things you can pray about together.
Allie kind of took my slide there, but that's okay. So family prayer and reflection, like she shared, there's ways to get at that information that children want to share. They want a space and an avenue to do it. We hear it all day. We hear tons of stories all day long. They want to share these things that happen in their day with you, and providing those opportunities, like the high-low buffalo, is a way to get in there. Then you use that information to guide that prayer, to guide that, I know that was an odd situation that happened to you, and then you can use that situation to then build on those prayers. That way it brings them all together. Obviously, establishing consistent prayer times before meals, obviously, bedtime reflections, wherever that looks like in your family structure or family timeline. Before school, we're going to pray right before we get out of the car every single day. We're going to pray on the way to school every single day. Whatever that looks like for you, you can use those pieces, those little tidbits that the kids share with you about their day, instead of just, oh, it's fine. You can build on that. Obviously, read scripture together. Relate those lessons that you are reading in the Bible. Put those into practice, or insert them into those situations that they share at the dinner table. Well, how would a disciple have handled that? How did Jesus respond when he was faced with trials and tribulations? What did that look like? How can we use that then to change how we respond next time? And then encourage gratitude as a family practice. How can we give thanks in our prayers? How can we live a generous spirit throughout our entire family? So what does that look like? What can you give thanks through prayers or through acts of service in your family?
So now we're going to give you some time to talk in your small groups. We are going to give you a behavior situation that you most likely have encountered or will encounter in the future, depending on how old your child is or children are at this point. We want you to read the situation. We want you to discuss the prompt. And then we want you to think of it in that faith-based lens. So we've given each situation a little reflection that will help you with that lens. We're going to give you 10 minutes to talk with your small groups, and then we're going to ask you to come back and share whatever you want from your discussion. It doesn't have to be anything long, and maybe your group decides not to share, but we would encourage that and love to hear it. So we're going to give you 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's too hard.
It's screwed up. All right, if we could bring it back together, we are going to. Okay, now, I know not everybody got to talk about every scenario, but we're gonna put scenario 1 up, and if someone who had scenario 1 at their table would please just share some key takeaways that your group talked about. And I will wait this out. I'm an educator. I have zero problem with awkward silence, so I'll sit here all night. No, if anyone for real though from scenario 1 would just give a couple.
That's us over here.
Yeah, look at that. You want a microphone? I think you actually need it because of the online. For all the people at home, you know?
What do you want?
Just some anything that you guys kind of share here.
So I would say that we typically set boundaries for our children in our particular situation, but especially with their toys. If they get the toys out, it's their expectation that they put them away. But if I extrapolate on this a little bit, it's when they take that same sort of reaction and start applying it a number of times across different situations in the house. Maybe they don't put their clothes away or whatever. And then that's kind of when we intervene and try to figure out what's going on. We'll have a heart-to-heart talk with them for sure. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Scenario 2, anyone from scenario 2 like to share? I mean,
Sibling rivalry.
sibling rivalry, this doesn't happen at any of your houses? Oh, I'll look at tables to see what people have. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, someone from here has to use this microphone.
Well, we all of us have at least 2 siblings in our house, and we have tried to have them step away and acknowledge what they did to the other person, calming themselves down, but making sure that they are realizing that what they did hurt the other person and that it's not okay. You go.
More along the lines of like being accountable for what they've done. So if child A, said something mean, or in this scenario, shoves the other one, to acknowledge that you can't hurt someone because they're upset, and then the other hopefully will be big enough to accept the apology when it comes. It sometimes works great in the moment. Other times it's more of go take a break and we'll come back to it. In our house in particular, we try to deal with it right then and there, so no one gets to take off until it's resolved.
Scenario 3, homework battle, thank you. That was a lot less awkward. It wasn't so hard to wait time.
Yeah, it's the 12-year-old. So we talked about how can you balance setting expectations while showing empathy? And I said, using I statements. I know you're very frustrated. This is hard for you. Talk about what can we do to help? Like, do you need to call a friend? Do you need to email a teacher? Some problem solving.
And scenario 4. Oh, look at this. Just landed upon you guys. Anyone here like to share?
So, yeah, we all have this come up in our families, and it's a challenge sometimes to accept the no or whatever, but often we just, as a group, we were thinking, well, we should give them a choice. It's either going to be this or that, but it's not going to be whatever. Also, just, point out that if they don't like to do this, well, maybe they want to do this, and then they're gonna probably not like the second choice.
But I do think when children want that control, you offering choices gives them that control. Even if one isn't preferred, like choices at school, so that way they can take ownership over it. And I think at homes it helps sometimes too, for sure. Scenario 5. Look at that. Oh, 2. Oh, you're gonna fight over it?
Fellow teacher, so you gotta help girl out here. So what we talked about here is that in guiding the responsibility, like the initial thing that we talked about, especially like from my personal experience, is that I have to make sure that I'm in a frame of reference that I'm not gonna go and be like, it was totally your fault. You broke a kid's toy. Like you need to go talk to them and be kind of frustrated and upset with them already from the get-go because they're already coming in with their own emotion. So that I need to know that like I need to take a breath and change my tone so that when I'm talking to them that I say, I'm really sorry that you feel upset, what happened, or we need to go talk to them because they're not feeling well. How would you feel if your toy got broken, even if it was an accident? But really kind of that initial one, I think we kind of all know how to get them to try and take accountability for it, but making sure that our emotions are in a scenario that can guide some peace and calm into the situation instead of amping them up more.
Do you have anything to add?
We mostly said the same things, and then we would kind of sit them down, let's get the story of what happened, and that it's okay if you did accidentally break the toy. It's an accident, and we talk about it. Even if you didn't mean to do it, it's okay that it broke. You can discuss it with a friend. And, same thing, like how would you feel if your toy was broken, and help your friend feel better.
Nothing makes me more happy than when either teachers, because teachers obviously get elevated emotions also, or children have elevated emotions, and I meet them with exact opposite emotion. So they go, they're hot, and I'm either funny or insanely calm, which is not my character, and they get like curious about it, and they're like, oh, it's no fun to be so mad when I don't get to have somebody be so mad with, and it's easier because you're removed at a school setting, and in the family it's harder to do that because it's harder to remove yourself from that emotion, but it's super important to do that. So I love that both groups there shared that, so thank you.
So our key takeaways for tonight, and before I go into that, just thank you all for sharing. Having a microphone in your face is not always easy, and you all were champions, so thank you. So first, recognize behavior as communication and respond with empathy. What's the why behind the behavior? Stop. Get yourself calm. Think about, where is this coming from? Use restorative practices, and it sounds like they're happening. You're sharing a lot of those restorative practices already. Teach accountability, not punishment, right? It was a mistake that they broke the toy, but what are you going to do about it, right? We don't do everything on purpose. Sometimes we see they do things on purpose too, and that's another thing we have to deal with, but things do happen. We need to take that responsibility. Model reconciliation. Show forgiveness in action. Show them how to do it. Model it. Set loving boundaries, guide with consistency and kindness. Those boundaries, kids want boundaries. It makes them feel safe. And then that consistency is key because that's going to build the safety. If we're consistent about how we respond, how we're guiding them, they're going to know it's okay to talk about these things and talk through these things. If one time we're really upset that they did the same thing, that we're calm the next time, and then we're upset, they don't know what they're getting. They're not going to feel safe and be able to talk through those things. And I know it's hard. And then create a faith-filled home, center family life on prayer and patience.
All right, here's our closing. And I know we probably don't have time for questions and answers because Jill's already coming up here. But no family's perfect. Our families obviously are not perfect. If you know my kids, they're a testament to that. But small changes lead to lasting piece. So if you can take one thing from this and put it into practice, who knows? Maybe you'll make small changes in your family dynamics, and that's the goal, right? Forgiveness and growth, our lifelong process, we're still learning it, so our children lean on faith and community for support, and there's no time for questions. Thank you. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You can take
Are there any questions? No one wanted to speak up before, so. All right, well, we'll be around. You know where to find us.